Welcome to the third part of the video of the lesson Friends and Stranger. I am going to read the first passage of the last page. So listen it. In their faces. And it was then that, looking at each other, each felt the other to be unreal as Pramod. And both parted even without saying good night to each other. In fact, they had been seen almost running to their homes. Next passage. Next day, Tirthankar was heard trying to ascertain from the others, at first tactfully and later directly. Tactfully means here using some trick or idea. When exactly Shibrat had died, before long Shibrat was heard making the same query about Tirthankar. Now what is the explanation of both the passages? I am going to tell you the summary. Here we can see the picture of two friends, Tirthankar and Shibrat. They were looking to each other surprisingly. And as and when the cloud moves from moon, immediately moon falls the bright light on both of the faces, and they looked each other as they were looking the person like ghost. They consider both of them as a ghost, and they felt each other as unreal as Pramod. Why they consider Tirthankar and Shibrat consider themselves unreal? Because they saw Pramod at evening time, and actually they got message that Pramod got died in the afternoon. So how could they see Pramod at evening time? That was a question in their mind. So that's why they thought, if we could see dead person like Pramod, so we are also dead, we are not alive. So that's why next day what happened, Tirthankar asked to each and every person, means villager, about Shibrat's existence, and Shibrat was asking to the villagers about Tirthankar's existence. So they were asking about each other's existence to the villagers. That's why villagers believed that they both were also unreal. Now what happened next, we'll see in the next passage. Now we move to the next passage. Despite overwhelming proof of their being alive and active, each continued viewing the other's existence as unreal. Both were nice chaps otherwise, agreed the townsman. Our town, though small, had at least one wise man to explain the episode rationally. According to him, the passers-by whom the two friends had supposed to be Pramath was somebody else. He must have spoken something quite different from what the two friends heard. Once they had made this mistake, the moonlight played a trick. It showed the stranger as a Pramath. The rest of the mischief was done by wayward breeze that made them hear words which they imagined they heard. But the wise man, while presenting his thesis, made a gesture that did not go well with his explanation. And last passages and some lines, one passage is left. On nights, means every night, when the moon looked somewhat wild, the winds went crazy. The two friends, if they were in town, kept to their rooms and peeped out through their windows, looking perfectly bewildered, means confused. Now what do the both paragraphs says to us? I am going to explain. First, despite overwhelming proof, means both and as well as villagers having the overwhelming perfect proof of their being alive and active, means Tirthankar and Shivrat both are alive. They were not ghost like Pramath. Alive and active. Each continued viewing each other's existence as unreal, even though they were not ready to accept each other's existence. They considered themselves as unreal, like Pramath. Both were nice chaps otherwise, agreed the townsmen. And all the townsmen means town villagers, people of town is called townsmen. Villagers believed that they were good person, but they believed they were ghost. They were unreal, like Pramath. Our town, though small, had at least one wise man. Every town, every village has some wise man. In the same way, here, author's town has some wise person, and one wise man explained his theory or thesis episode rationally. Means what happened actually. He guessed. Who guessed here? Wise man guessed about the incident that occurred at the autumn evening with Pramod, Shibrat and Tirthankar. So according to him, according to wise person, the passers-by whom the two friends had supposed to be Pramod was somebody else, means passers-by, person to whom Tirthankar and Shibrat see. At the same time, he might be other person. It might not be a Pramod. It might be some unknown person because that was a evening time. He must have spoken something to quite different from what the two friends heard. What was the Pramod? The person was talking to them, Shibrat and Tirthankar, and whatever Shibrat and Tirthankar replied to Pramod, maybe two friends and Pramod, when they were talking, they heard some different things than they want to talk. Means they heard some different words than the actual words. Once they had made the mistake, the moonlight played a trick, and moonlight also played a trick because the moonlight was very dark. They could not see each other's face properly, and they, Miss Tirthang and Shibrat, were sitting on rock, and the distance was somewhat very, we can say, very pretty. So that's why they could not see. Tirthankar and Shibrat could not see Pramod, and Pramod could not see Tirthankar. So it might happen that Tirthankar and Pramod considered unknown person as Pramod, and that unknown person considered Tirthankar and Shibrat as his friend, and showed the stranger as Pramod. The rest of the mischief was done by the wayward breeze, means moving breeze. Breeze means gentle air, is called breeze. Is called breeze, means gentle air, that made them hear the words which imagine they heard. And it might happen that whatever the conversation occurred with among them, it was totally wrong. Whatever the words carried by the winds, that broken words carried by the winds to Tirthankar and Shibrat ears, and that was maybe incorrect, or they could not hear the proper word what that unknown person was saying to Shibrat and Tirthankar. And Tirthankar, when he was saying to that unknown person, considered as a Pramath, even that person could not listen the words of Shivbrat and Tirthankar properly and simply said yes and no. So moonlight and breeze, that created a different kind of atmosphere, and due to that this coincident situation happened in the life of Shivbrat and Tirthankar. Now but the wise man, while representing his thesis means, we can say here, that is given an idea or theory that tries to explain why something is happened. An idea or theory that tries to explain why something is happened is called thesis. So as and when wise man says something after presenting his own viewpoint regarding the situation, at last he said that important thing, there are gestures, means body movement, that he did not go well with his explanation, even though that wise person was not sure about his explanation. Whether Pramod was alive or not, wise man couldn't say perfectly or properly. So again, Tirthankar and Shivbrat got afraid whether they both were alive or not. They got suspect on their presence or existence. On nights, so every night, as and when they visit, every night when they visit their own village during any holidays, at the same time they looked moon wild and wind went crazy. When moon was very wild, means dark moon, at the same time wind very crazy, wind was moving and gushing fastly. At nights the two friends thought that if they were unreal. Normally in normal days they thought they were totally alive, they are active. But some nights, means on nights, means some night, when this situation happened, which situation, moon went and moon looked wild and wind went crazy. At those nights they considered themselves as unreal, and they kept themselves in their own homes, and they looked to each other perfectly bewildered. They looked each other that they were unreal like Pramath, and they got confused. But in this lesson, the real situation is that Shivbrat and Tirthankar are alive and active, and whatever the situation happened with them, that was due to wind, due to moonlight, and due to the distance and talking. So whatever, if you want to talk to any person, listen the words properly, otherwise you will also get confused by the same scenario. What happened can also happen with you. So listen it, whatever the words spoken by your will be spoken by your father, mother,